worship. Big thank you to the women of the LCA Tack and Pack group for making dinner. Great job. Wonderful. A big thank you to everybody that's been making the meals, and to our speakers, I guess you would say, our preachers in this series. I think it's been a great series, and I've heard a lot of good feedback. A big thank you to Eddie Jennings for recording these services. I think part of our success this year has been the fact that we're able to record them and share them with those who aren't able to make it, but still want to participate. Without further ado, I invite you to rise and sing.
Thank you.
and fill us, so that in union with all creation, we might sing your praise and your love in our lives. Amen. A reading from the 3rd chapter of the prophet Habakkuk. O Lord, I have heard of your renown, and I stand in awe, O Lord, of your work. In our own time revive it, in our own time make it known. In wrath may you remember mercy. God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. The brightness was like the sun. Rays came forth from his hand, where his power lay hidden. Before him went pestilence, and plague followed close behind. He stopped and shook the earth. He looked and made the nations tremble. The eternal mountains were shattered along his ancient pathways. The everlasting hills sank low. I saw the tents of Cushan under affliction. The tent curtains of the land of Midian trembled. Was your wrath against the rivers, O Lord? Or your anger against the rivers? Or your rage against the sea, when you drove your horses, your chariots to victory? You brandished your naked bow. Sated were the arrows at your command. Selah. You split the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and writhed. A torrent of water swept by. The deep gave forth its voice. The sun raised high its hands. The moon stood still in its exalted place at the light of your arrows speeding by, at the gleam of your flashing spear. In fury you trod the earth. In anger you trampled nations. You came forth to save your people, to save your anointed. You crushed the head of the wicked house, laying it bare from foundation to roof. Selah. You pierced with his own arrows the head of his warriors, who came like a whirlwind to scatter us, gloating as if ready to devour the poor who were hiding. You trampled the sea with your horses, churning the mighty waters. Of all the prophets in the Old Testament, our picture of Habakkuk is the most incomplete. At best, we believe he lived in Judah around the 6th century BC. At that time, Judah is a tiny blip on the ancient map, adversely wedged between two superpowers, sliding towards one another like tectonic plates, bringing forth violent change. Babylon to the east, Egypt to the southwest. The two foreign empires are on a collision course, with the vulnerable people of Israel at the center of it all, watching and waiting for the worst. If that weren't enough, Judah continues to struggle with its own inherent internal turmoil. The scene is bleak, and the prophet feels abandoned by God. Crying out in anger and confusion, Habakkuk questions God's presence amidst the overwhelming uncertainty all around him, never really receiving an answer from the Lord. Yet even without an audible reply of promise, the prophet takes the image of God as a divine warrior who will save the people, and he concludes with hope, trusting that though silent, the Lord is indeed listening and will most certainly respond faithfully. Though the situation remains as it is, all is not lost. The Lord is for Habakkuk his strength and his salvation. Sitting there in that hospital corridor, I was wedged between growing fear and uncertainty. The tension pressing upon me was so intense that I could do little more than cry and beg God for help. Hunched over on that chair across from the OR doors, each second crept along as if an hour had gone by. I felt completely alone. And worse yet, I was angry and confused as to why I couldn't be in there with her, the one who just stepped out with our screaming child. It's replaying all over again. We had been there nearly all day. When it finally came time to deliver, with every push, our little guy's heart rate dropped. After a few tries, the doctor made the call: emergency C-section. In a moment, the whole plan got thrown out, and we were left grasping for anything on which to ground ourselves amidst the swirling storm of panic. As they prepped her for surgery, I was left out beside the nurse's station. With all the classes I had taken and books that I had read over college and seminary, theologizing the present situation couldn't have been further from my mind. For all the people that I had comforted in the hope of Christ present amidst their uncertainties, right then and there, hope was little bit more than a visceral reaction. I hadn't reasoned through it. If anything, hope came into that place and found me weeping there in my paper-thin scrubs. Even as I couldn't accept it, hope embraced me tighter than any doubt and despair I had surrendered myself to previously. Did I see or know it in that moment? Honestly, no. Nevertheless, Christ was present with me, and more importantly, my growing family, and all those attending to them just beyond those doors. Hope is not hope because of a changed outcome. In spite of our daily diluting it, making proclamations like, "I sure hope traffic isn't too bad on the way to church," or "I sure hope our elected officials get their act together," or even following a tragedy when we all together say in a chorus, "We hope this never happens again." Hope is far more than our personal desires, eager wishes, or blind optimism. It is rather the manifestation of a promise, an assurance coming to fruition, not by our doing, but on account of God and God's gracious love and care for us through Jesus. Habakkuk clings to hope as everything around him is crumbling. This very assurance the prophet holds is what gives him the courage to confess the Lord is his strength and his salvation, even amidst a most dismal backdrop. For us, this promise is incarnate in the one who takes on our very flesh and blood, journeys with us throughout the entirety of our lives, accompanying us in both our great joys and our overwhelming sorrows. Jesus is our hope, not because the cross is erased from the picture, but because we are never, ever left alone. And when death does come, it is not the end of the story. As we face uncertainties in our daily lives, the promise always remains, even when we struggle to hear or claim it. Christ is present with you, always. Trust in him to be your strength and your salvation. Our hope is not in vain. Amen. The light shines in the darkness. And the darkness has not overcome.
Rejoice, O highly favored, for God
people of peace that passes all understanding, and the will to live your gospel of mercy and justice through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
God, remember us in your love and teach us to pray.
Our Father, who art in heaven,